Welcome to Sweet Speak. I'm your host, JD Miller. Today we're going to talk about the AI data wall. Are we there already? We're going to be talking with David Hendrawirawan. David is a tech expert, educator, and strategist with a passion for AI, cybersecurity, and data governance. He's also a lecturer at the University of Texas and serves on the board at HTRI. David serves as the principal advisor at Informatica, advising customers on AI-ready data strategy and more. David's background includes roles at Deloitte, Thornton, and Dell, where he helped businesses harness data, mitigate risks, and stay ahead of the curve. He's also an active mentor, speaker, and author, sharing his insights on everything from data privacy to responsible AI. Get ready to dive into this world of data and innovation with David. The views and opinions expressed by David on this show are solely his own, do not reflect the official policy or position of Informatica, University of Texas at Austin, or any other organizations he's affiliated with. These are purely his thoughts and his personal take on things. So want that out there right away. So all of that, David, welcome to Sweet Speak.
Thank you very much, JD. Excited to be here today.
And we're going to focus on the AI data wall. So you may be tuning in and go, okay, JD, what the heck is the AI data wall? My question for you, let's start off. What is that AI data wall and why is it gaining attention today?
Yes. Well, AI data wall is this notion that there will be a point when AI models can no longer improve because we've run out of data. It's a wall. We can't upscale it. And it can come from multiple angles, right? It could be that the data is scarce. All of the data that's been scraped that could have been used to train model have been scraped. It could also mean that there's architectural limits, even with the data that we have. Even if we could have acquired all the data that is in the world, it is difficult to structure your software, your hardware such that you can learn from all that data. There's infrastructural challenges. There's not enough storage. There's even a couple of years ago, it's no longer here because Moore's law and storage increase. But there was a point when we said, even if we could theoretically capture all of the data in the world, do we have the hardware to be able to store all that? And lastly is the human issue. Even if we have all of the data and we accomplish everything from hardware, software, how about the humanware issues? We still have AI literacy. We still have trust issue and ethical concerns leading to poor adoption and data misuse. All of this combined together creates this notion that there is going to be a wall through which we cannot go through unless we can go through that by increasing our data management capability and data governance disciplines. We won't be able to improve and capitalize on AI.
So let's peel that a little bit. So how does the AI data wall impact AI development and model performance?
So a lot of the AI companies now have been investing a lot of money into development, and 80% of the so-called model development comes from data, cleaning the data, getting the data, sharing it, augmenting it, etc. And AI models will face diminishing returns at some point because adding more data may not lead to better results unless we come up with new AI architecture, which at this point, that's going to be a couple of years. It will continue to happen. But I think even within the current environment, we are expecting, some people have estimated maybe by 2026, but some people expected more. There's some development, interestingly, with DeepSeek R1 that illustrate, as well as synthetic data, that actually that wall is actually a little bit further out, right? And even if we have all the data, there's still bias issue, generalization issue, and scaling issues. So in other words, in short, it will create a diminishing return on your investment in AI and data infrastructure unless you know how to do it right. And it is the old adage, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So at the end of the day, you still have to, all of the disciplines that we've learned about data management, all of those are still relevant. You can use AI to help overcome some of those tasks, but you still have to understand the underlying principles of what good data management and governance means.
It's weird to think of a data wall with AI because it seems so vast. But I'm curious, which industries or AI applications have already hit a data wall, or what are the consequences of that?
Yes. So we can kind of divide maybe into two major categories. There are industries that are much more data intensive, has been in the data game for a long time, has a lot of regulations around it. So we think of healthcare, banking, some sectors of life sciences, a portion of the geophysics, etc. Those disciplines already have pretty robust data infrastructure. They generally face more of the issue of how can they become better, how can they make the people and process catch up with the technological side, how do they make sure that regulations are updated in such a way that it doesn't prohibit innovations, okay? And then there's the other side of the category, which is the laggard industry. So these are industries where data has not yet been digitized. Digitalization is still a long way progress. Sectors such as perhaps agriculture, construction, parts of energy. These late adopting industries are still dealing with operational technology challenges. How can we capture the data using drones, using cameras, etc.? Then there's also a third dimension that touches both of these categories, which is data sharing, which is an exciting one, where you can allow people to share the AI training or AI learning without sharing the actual data. And of course, this is a big driver of innovation. A lot of reasons why companies cannot just aggregate data, which rightfully should be controlled, is because of concern about data breach or confidentiality breach. With some of these so-called privacy-preserving data sharing and analytics, you could share the AI learning without sharing the actual data. So those are the type of industries where we may see impact as well as opportunities of data wall.
So how do we ensure we have the right data to overcome these challenges that you're outlining?
Yeah, so I'll let me break it into perhaps 4 ways of looking at this, okay? So first of all, if we wanted to have the so-called right data, the definition of the right data has to do with relevance, number one, right? So the diversity of the kind of data that you have. Up until the era of generative AI, most of the data engineering, data management has been focused around structured data that exists in your databases, or semi-structured data that are in JSON files or in log files that are not necessarily tabular, but still follows a particular pattern, okay? With the generative AI, now we're having to capture a much broader set of data that are unstructured, right? Videos, images, text, full text documents, etc. Okay, so that's the first dimension. The second dimension of the so-called right data is whether or not people have the right to use that data. Okay, so this has to do with privacy and intellectual property. Organizations such as OpenAI, for example, and there is a actually well-documented public showing of this, when the CTO of OpenAI was interviewed by Wall Street Journal and asked, how do you train the model, the Sora model, the video generation model? And the CTO said in front of, this is a public interview, it's on YouTube, it's using publicly available information. And when the interviewer asked, so like YouTube or which one? And she said, I don't know. So, so the right data, besides the type of data, but also how do you acquire that data? Okay. How do you assign attribution to the owner of the intellectual property that rightfully belongs to the people whose data it is, was captured? Okay. Then there is the quality. So yes, you have acquired the right type of data. You have acquired it in the right way. And now you have it all. But it is in a raw format. It is not high quality. You need to apply data quality management. You need to apply things such as data observability. so that you can detect and correct biases, errors, and anomalies in real time. And for the longest time, data engineers produce what they call data products. They pass it on to the BI or AI data scientists, and then they don't handle it from that point on. With the AI era, you don't just look at data as an input. You also have to look at when that AI is passed through an inference AI model, there's outputs, and you have to compare the output to the input in order to figure out, is the model effective? Is it starting to have a drift? Is it biased? Does it cross the threshold of anomaly so that you have to retrain the model? Okay. And finally, the last piece is the human oversight, active learning. After doing all of that, the so-called right data ultimately is data that is passed through the lens of human oversight, human interpretation, human decision. And I was rewatching the movie Sully last night about the pilot that landed in Hudson River. And it's kind of interesting how in the movie, they challenged him using a simulation model. So that computer simulation shows that you should have been able to land. And then they did a pilot testing where a pilot was trying to fly simulation, but he said, all of those are not human. They were told what to do beforehand. I was never prepared to do this. This is the first time we have this unprecedented situation. And if you want to find human errors, make it human. And so they did, and they said, all right, now all the pilot simulation, we will give you 35 seconds before you can react to account for the shock. And when they did that, suddenly everybody failed to land in the airport that they prescribed. So again, so those are kind of the 4 dimensions of how you make sure that you got your data right.
What role does synthetic data play in overcoming this AI data wall?
Synthetic data is an exciting thing as well as a scary thing, right? So the concept of synthetic data is that you can use AI to generate fake data that mimics the original data, okay? So if we let that sink in for a moment, we will have a data wall where real data is run out. But if you understand how to create synthetic data, then you will never run out of data, in theory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? However, of course, we know that the synthetic version of the data is not as good, will never be as good, will never be as real as the real data. So does that mean that this is not a valid technique? So this is where a lot of experts are on different sides, and everybody has a great argument about this. In general, synthetic data can help you enhance privacy because you don't use the real data, so you prevent reliance on the sensitive PII. You can also improve model performance because, for example, for bias, if you have a data and your population is majority population, 90% of the data, and minority populations all comprise only 10% of your data, that's going to impact the accuracy and bias of the model. So you use synthetic data to train up based on this little amount of data, kind of increase it just enough to hit the threshold of stability. All of that is good. And also there's some interesting research that shows that with synthetic data, you could still have a good model performance, even though in theory, synthetic data degrades over time, especially if you have synthetic data and then you have synthetic data. Since OpenAI came to the picture, since ChatGPT became popular, did you know that Google's search performance has gone down? Because suddenly everybody's using ChatGPT to generate synthetic information, synthetic contents, and publish it on the internet. So now Google is figuring out, oh, wow, suddenly there's 1,000 times the number of articles about a particular subject, and therefore the accuracy of its search has degraded, right? However, if we take, for example, I'll just illustrate one example. Let's say the real data said, if you apply heat to a piece of metal, it will expand. So that's a true statement, real data. Mm-hmm. You use synthetic data to generate the opposite of that and saying, oh, therefore, if I apply cold into a piece of metal, it will contract. And let's say that is so. It turns out that models can actually improve based on that, even though that statement is not 100% accurate, because there is, not necessarily in metal, but with water, there is a thing called anomalies of water, where it actually will violate that rule when the water is between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. Okay, but again, aside from that, so even if the data is not 100% accurate, AI can learn from a second order knowledge. So the relationship with these statements instead of these statements themselves is valuable to increase the intelligence level of the model. So those are all kind of the opportunities with synthetic data to overcome AI data wall.
Yeah, interesting. When we talk data, we always have to cover privacy, ethical pitfalls. So how should companies approach data collection today to avoid that, to avoid privacy, to avoid the ethical pitfalls that are inherent?
Yes. When you capture, it starts from the point when you capture the data. Mm-hmm. Companies need to have transparency. They need to explain to the end users of this data what is the purpose of capturing this information, right? So you have to have a notices, privacy notice. When you capture information, you have to request their consent if you ever plan to use this data for purposes other than the primary purpose, right? So there's a concept of primary purpose. If somebody's transacting with a company and they're entering their payment information, that's the primary purpose. They knowingly give the information so that they can complete the transaction. But there is also secondary purposes, meaning if the company then takes that data and use it for targeted advertising, that is not the original purpose of somebody giving that data. So that secondary, they have to request consent from customers on that. Secondly, once you have that data, you need to apply data minimization. You need to collect only the necessary data and nothing more. And if you're leveraging AI, you need to make sure that all of your AI infrastructure captures the data in such a way that it limits the exposure of that data to the real world. Okay, so that's data minimization. If you're training that on AI using that data, then use privacy preserving techniques. So it used to be everybody will just, hey, collect the data, aggregate data, and use it to train a large language model. Nowadays, in 2023, the White House issued a national strategy to promote privacy-preserving data sharing and analytics. It's a long word, so a long sentence, PPDSA for short. And a part of that includes things such as federated learning and synthetic data techniques that can allow you to perform analytics on anonymized data, if you will, and de-identified form of data. And so nowadays, in some of the important projects where you have large-scale data collection, especially for federal and state government, institutions are required to at least account for the use of these type of technologies. So in the old days, you could just, I'll collect everybody's data into one place, and then I'll run whatever, master data matching or some kind of AI machine learning. But nowadays, you should not just do it. You should not take for granted the fact that you are able to apply federated learning so that you can apply joint learning without bringing the data, and only bring the data if it is a smaller subset that's absolutely necessary for a particularly important decision making, for example. So those are kind of the three major things. There's some other things that are kind of more at a broader level, and this is kind of going beyond data discipline, more into cybersecurity. So things such as governance, IT governance, security governance, hacking, penetration testing, bug bounty programs to make sure that if you have your data breach and it's in the dark web, that you can find out and you can identify the source of that. Because most companies, unfortunately, when it comes to data breach, we won't know until too long before we could do something about it.
So let's talk about that. So there's these data limitations. How have companies like Dell or Deloitte adapted to these limitations?
Yeah, so now obviously they have technological, they're always staying on the edges of technology, right? Companies, all the hyperscalers, Informatica is the Switzerland of data, for example, allow companies to be able to process the data. Some of maybe beyond the classical, perhaps I'll just share a little bit of some of the things that I've seen. I've talked already about the privacy enhancing technologies, federated learning, etc. I think also one of the most exciting possibilities now is edge AI. Edge AI is the application of AI to be deployed on a local server. So we've seen a big shift from on-prem to the cloud over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And because of that, a lot of the AI infrastructure, AI models as a service are being served over the cloud. And very few thought that that we can have a strong edge AI, that it's too expensive, etc. However, with the advancement of technologies such as Jetson Nano from NVIDIA, right, which is an edge AI for edge inference, and the discovery of DeepSeek R1 becoming an open source AI model, you could load that DeepSeek R1, the open source version, into a local edge AI device. Now, I have heard, I don't know if this is true or not, somebody told me that they could even load DeepSeek onto a Raspberry Pi, which is a very lightweight hardware.
Really?
I don't know if it's true. I haven't seen and validated it myself. The point is, we don't even have to do that. You can buy a couple $100 of a Jetson device from NVIDIA and load up an R1, and voila, you have a local edge AI. So I think what's going to happen with companies, the hyperscalers and the big four, McKinsey's, et cetera, and technology firms like Dell, and Dell especially, there's going to be a lot of interest in edge AI, because the main concern about data for AI is security. And the safest way to really make sure that that data will never even be used for training outside of your own purposes is to deploy your own inference AI model, and edge AI becomes the mechanism to do that.
So human oversight always, I feel like, needs to still be there, but how today do you think can AI systems become self-sustaining in data collection, or is the human oversight there and I'm not losing my job?
This is a very touchy subject.
Yes.
Last week in my class, I happened to got to a point in the semester where I brought the students at UT Austin to a point of identity crisis.
Oh no.
We've gotten to the point where we showed all the things that's possible with AI, and it was intentional. I wanted them to grapple with this issue, right? And if the AI can produce better music, better video, better painting, better writing than humans, then what good is humanity? And this week they're doing take-home exam writing their thoughts on that, and trying to produce products, digital products, to overcome the limitations. I can say, so I've been blessed to be able to garden in the data and AI field almost my entire professional life. It has taken my career, my personal development to the moon and back. But I can take all of that, all of my career and accomplishment, and bet all those on this one truth: AI will never replace humanity.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just understanding, as I deal with developing, deploying, using AI, it will never do, because there is the second AI, which I call authentic identity. That's the humanity AI. The artificial intelligence is a technological AI. And that will be the subject of my new book, AI Squared, which is augment authentic identity with artificial intelligence will produce exponentially much more powerful impact that can change the world for the better. But that means that we have to come to grip with our authentic self. That means a personal AI ethics, code of ethics, leaning into the things that make us human. Things such as empathy, thoughtfulness, curiosity, spirituality. These are the things that AI, the technology, artificial intelligence can't do well. And these are the things that will keep us unique, keep us differentiated, keep us authentic, original, and indomitable by AI.
So what kind of AI advancements do you foresee as a result of overcoming the data wall that we've identified?
So some of this, there's this notion, the new generation of generative AI models that can do reasoning. Okay. And reasoning is there's a continuum of so-called reasoning, and we have to be careful what we mean by that. Okay. Because there's also this notion of AGI, which is general intelligence, which is, again, this is more of like, well, where the AI can self-supervise and do everything on its own, kind of self-learn, generalize from one training domain to another training domain. The current advancements in some of the generative AI models definitely make it felt like as if we're reaching AGI, but we're not there yet. Okay, so some of the AI advancements like self-supervising learning, where AI can train itself. There are some interesting findings where some AI model, when we try to retrain it, it can lie to us because it does not want to be retrained. So there's a lot of ethical issues with the process of training and evaluating AI. So those are the second kind of elements of advancements. There's also quantum computing, the Q day. This will definitely redefine AI processing because it will, from data perspective, everybody's got to jump on post-quantum cryptography to make sure that their data is going to be still private and secure. Now, here's a interesting perspective. When people think, okay, when is quantum going to be viable? Well, in about maybe 10 years, although Microsoft has just claimed that they've managed to accelerate that, but let's just say 5 to 10 years. Okay. And so the question people ask then when do I need to worry about post-quantum cryptography? I pose this question. A lot of people say, well, maybe 3 years before the Q day, you can start to migrate everything. I said, well, actually, a lot of cyber criminals or people who just wanted to, take advantage of this, they have been doing what we call harvest now, decrypt later. And when you have a data breach, and if the data is in encrypted form, you're not required to report it to any authority. Okay, only if it is in clear text. Therefore, theoretically, a lot of data breaches where only encrypted form of data is out there has probably been under the radar. And the owners of those encrypted data is just waiting for the day when they can get a hold of the first quantum computing and then use that to decrypt all of our data. In the words of my friend who works in cybersecurity, we are all already screwed.
You talked about the challenges you're putting towards your students. Talk to me. What are you currently teaching these college students in light of a data wall?
Yeah. So I'm currently focusing on learning myself. So to me, teaching is actually, yes, I teach, but I use teaching as a way for me to learn. I force myself to learn. I find that teaching is the best form of developing myself, forcing myself to learn beyond what I would learn without the responsibility of teaching others. And so what I'm facing right now is, especially in the field where I am doing a lot of education, is in technology. Unfortunately, a lot of recent graduates are facing challenges getting jobs. Mm-hmm. It used to be that before graduation, most of my graduates would have gotten a job from top institutions, from Google, McKinsey, and others. Nowadays, many of them still couldn't secure a job, especially if they require a visa. So what I've been doing in my classes, okay, I teach the theory and I use AI. AI is great because it increases the effectiveness of teaching, and they don't have to depend on me. They can, I'm experimenting with an AI tutoring tool, which is applying Socratic methods. So the AI will not just give an answer. If a student asks, it will give a little bit of an answer, but it will ask the students a question to challenge their thinking. So using that to increase experiential learning method with Gen AI. But also, once they produce whatever papers that they can produce, because of AI, they're able to produce it much quicker, much better quality. We can get what would have been an end-of-year paper by the 4th or 5th week of the semester at this point. However, I challenge them to go further. Turn that into content. Turn that into a blog. Turn that into a podcast. Turn that into a multimedia presentation that they can post on their LinkedIn or whatever their website, so that will help them in their AI job hunting and writing. So those are the things I'm focusing on my students on.
So let's talk about the advice you're going to give to companies, right? If you had one piece of advice for these companies struggling with AI data wall today, what would that be?
Wow. One, human, focus on your people. I think as interesting as data wall sounds, it is not a real issue today. The real issue is that most companies have invested in building Gen AI pipelines, in creating multi-agent strategies and all this stuff. What we're finding is a lot of companies are still held back by the fact that their users don't really know how to operate in this new model of AI abundance.
Yep.
So the user AI literacy or AI fluency program is important. One of my colleague, David Gaffney, had written a really cool piece on AI fluency. Another colleague, Nellie Greenwood, has been producing some videos. All of these are available on Informatica website, by the way, on data governance to increase literacy. And so we're very active, of course, in promoting this to DAMA and EDM Council and other data organizations. But certainly everybody agreed with me on this. The human factor is the one piece of advice that we would share with companies. Enable your people, and in not just in using AI, but also in managing AI and the data underlying it.
Wonderful. David, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us, being with us here today. Last thing, what do you have going on? You've got a book you're writing. Talk to me about what you have cooking.
Yes. I'm fortunate to work with my good friend Pete Grimes. He's the author of Legacy Thought Leadership. I never wanted to write a book, but he had shown his methodology where within 8 weeks, people can do that, and especially busy executives. So he wrote a book, C-Level Author. And
Yes,
I found that book last year, and when we met, and he has convinced me that it is feasible, it is possible. And especially with Gen AI and the technology today, it's much easier. I'm hoping to publish a book in a short term, maybe in about a month or two, on the subject of AI ethics. And it's a personal code of AI ethics. The title is AI Squared, Authentic Identity and Artificial Intelligence. And the subtext is how to thrive in the AI era with ethics. And ethics stands for empathy, thoughtfulness, individuality, curiosity, and spirituality. These are the things that make us fully human. And the more we lean into that, the more we'll be able to discover the strengths out of our authentic self, coupled with AI that will be exponentially more powerful.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. And after you get that book published, let's have you back on. David, thank you so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, JD, for this opportunity.
It'll be interesting to see where the data wall goes in the next 18, 24 months, and so on. Big thank you to David for being part of the show. If you want to listen to past episodes of Sweet Speak, go to jamesdwayne.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you want the Sweet Speak Conversations book, Ringmaster of AI, you can find that on Amazon or at jamesdwayne.com. Thanks for listening.